Hi, I'm Tom Stevenson and welcome to Microsoft Project, the course. This is video number 17 and today we're going to be running through a checklist of items that you should be reviewing your schedule with. I've had a lot of clients recently have certain issues, and I think if you have a checklist to really review things before you set the baseline, that will really help you in organizing yourself so that you don't have some pre-existing problems. So I'm going to talk about different things that you should look at when you're actually going through your file. So that file that I've created a little checklist file, and I've actually put it into the notes on the actual heading already. So I'm going to double click on this heading here, and you can see I've got this checklist here, and it talks about no open ends, holidays all correct, WBS work breakdown structure incorrect alignment, no links to the WBS, review schedule from end to beginning, review it from beginning to end, review network diagram, review all costs in cost sheet, check for resource over allocation, spell check, and no constraints or constraints that are causing issues in your schedule. So let's run through that a little bit, because I've created this start point file and I've loaded it in Google Drive. So in the description below, you can download this and you can follow along. You can try the checklist yourself. I've also downloaded a Microsoft Word version of the checklist, so you can actually download that as a good starting point, reference point for you to review your projects. Because if you've been watching the earlier videos, we started right from scratch and we worked our way through. So this is giving you some indications of other things that you need to do before you go ahead and baseline the schedule. So let's go through them, what they are. You can follow along or you can just sort of watch and take it all in. Either works. Again, I'm a professor of construction management. I've been teaching this for decades. I've worked with some of the best and brightest minds in the construction field, so I've been very fortunate that way, and I've learned from them, so I'm hoping to share some of that with you. All right, so I'm just going to close this right now. And I'm going to take a look for open ends. And I've talked about this a lot, and I know I sort of go back and forth on it, but it still keeps happening. So I want my students and clients to really sort of get this down. So I would review the actual Gantt chart. And again, this file is on Google Drive, so you can download it yourself if you want. But I would review the Gantt chart and see if I see anything that resembles an open end. Right? So an open end is something that's not connected, that's just hanging out there. So I tell everybody, do a quick review of that. And I'm looking at this and I'm seeing one here. I see that this isn't connected to anything. It's just hanging out there, right? So I'm going to say to myself, well, that needs to be fixed. And what would I want to fix that to? Well, let's see. So we've got setup trailer here. So let's say that we don't actually want to well, maybe in this case we could actually set up the trailer, but let's leave it with, yeah, let's do that with setup trailer here. Okay, so I'm going to put here, I don't want to actually mobilize on the site till we have our permit approved. So let's just say I'm going to go to number 6, and I'm going to put 6, and I'm going to put 6, comma, and what's that number here? So that's going to be number 5, permit approved. So I'm going to type in number 5, and I'm going to press enter. Now, what's my finish date right now? It's June 30th, right? So what's it now? Oh, now it's July 17th. So one open end caused that big difference there. Just one open end. You could imagine if you had like 15 or 20 of them in your schedule, what kind of impact that would have on your schedule. So keep that in mind. You really want to review things. Now, you could also look at the predecessor column here and see if you see any empty cells, and I don't. So that's a good thing. But you know what? Just because everything is connected as predecessors doesn't mean everything's connected as successors. The other thing is here as well is that I've got an empty one here. Well, the first activity, it doesn't or shouldn't have a predecessor. So this is the first activity called start. So that's fine. That's no problem. but everything else should have a predecessor to have the complete network. Go back to my earlier videos like 1 and 2 and you'll see I'll go through the critical path and explain that, maybe 1, 2, and 3. I'm going to click here on the top, I'm going to right click and I'm going to go insert column and I'm going to hit on successors, S for successors. Remember, you hit the first letter of the name of the column you're looking for, it should pop up, and there's successors. And so I could, this is a small project, right? So I could quickly look through and I could say, oh, bingo, there's one I missed. Oh, there's one at the end. But the one at the end, that's the last file, that's the last activity. So yeah, that shouldn't have anything. But this one, it should. And so I can see here that I may have missed it just because it was close there. Sometimes, you know what, just depends how it's actually brought out. Sometimes it's overhanging. That's why I don't necessarily only trust that view, right? Because I could miss it. Now, if you've got a particularly long project, which most of my clients do, they very often have, you know, projects that are 1,000 activities or more. If that's the case, that might be kind of laborious going through everything. So there's a shortcut you can do. You can click the down arrow here and you can say select all, show me just the blank ones. You click OK, and now it shows only the blank ones, right? And so it's showing only the blank ones. Now, I'm noticing some other problems here. I've got some of my headings, because it is showing me the headings. I haven't shut them off. I see some headings that actually have predecessors and successors, and that's not good either. That's not good either. But we'll deal with that in a minute. I see that activity number 14, rough in HVAC, doesn't have a successor. It's got a predecessor, and all my activities had predecessors, but see, even though everything has a predecessor, you can still have activities that don't have successors. So there's the lesson there. You should check both the successors for this, and you should do the same thing for the predecessors and see that there's no blank ones. In this case, it's the start that's blank. That's fine. And if you do filter it, don't forget you filtered it, right? Because otherwise you'll wonder, where did all my activities go? So you got to go back in, select all, click OK, and everything is now back in place. And I want to fix this. So I've got rough in HVAC. You know what? I want rough in HVAC to connect to inspections. So I either can type in here 16 or I can type in there 14, right? It's all relational. So maybe I'll do it, because I'm always doing it with predecessors just so you can see it. I'll do it here. All right. And you see how that now turned red because it's the same length as this. So that means it's on the critical path. It's the longest path through the project. Okay. So I also see here that if I look at my work breakdown structure, that should be another check that you do. Check the work breakdown structure. And what's that looking like? Well, it's looking like I've got some predecessors and successors in there. I don't want to have that. By the way, you could also check it by going to view, and instead of opening and shutting them individually, you could just say, I want to look at level 1. I want to look at level 2. Level 2 is where our headings finish. But some projects, they might finish on level 5. So you'd have to open them all up to make sure that everything is open. If you're not sure that everything is open, just click all subtasks, and that means everything should be open. Okay, so I don't like that these are connected here. It creates some redundancies and confusion, especially if you go like over, slide to the left, and you go into the network diagram. Network diagrams there. I should have these parallelograms off to the left. That's my heading. So that I see is good, but I see a parallelogram way over here called closeout, and it's just connected to this heading. Yet, I've got my activities that are involving closeout over here, right? And it's not connected to the heading. So it's causing some confusion that way. That doesn't seem right. So that's why best practice, Project Management Institute recommends that you do not link to summary tasks in their scheduling manual. So I'm going to get rid of this number 27 here. I'm going to get rid of this number 9. You link activities to activities, activities to activities, not to summary tasks. Now, when I got rid of that successor one, it should have got rid of the predecessor there, and it did. And so we're all good there. Also, While I was in the network diagram, I'll slide to the left, getting used to going to different screens. Network diagram. Now all my parallelograms are to the left. These pointy boxes are my milestones, so that's good. What's red is the critical path, what's blue is not. I'm looking to see, is everything connected? I'm doing a final check. As long as I see connections from every activity, I know I don't have any open ends. So I check open ends. First, I review the Gantt chart. Then I review the predecessors and the successors. I filter them, I see if there's any empty ones, and then I do a final check in the network diagram to make sure that that is all okay. And now I'm going to slide to the left, right click, go back to my Gantt chart. And going to my notes over here under the indicator column, I can see that I've got my notes. So no open ends, we're good with that. Holidays, all correct. All right, so for holidays, all correct, I would go to project and I would go to change working time. This project starts January 2023. It's behind us already, but we're gonna look through that. So I'm gonna start in January. It doesn't start till January 8th, so I don't care that New Year's isn't there. All right, so I'm gonna go to the next month. Okay, there's Family Day. And if you're in the US or different country, UK, whatever your holidays is, you're checking. Now I do notice here that I made 3 Saturdays work days. Let's say I wanted that, so I created that, so I'm good with that. I showed you how to do that in an earlier video. You can go back to my earlier videos and look at how to create calendars. I'm checking that I've got Good Friday, I've got Victoria Day in Canada we celebrate, I guess Memorial Day in the US, July 4th in the States, July 1st in Canada, so then we would get the Monday off, so that's looking good. First Monday in August we get off, Labor Day we get off, and then this project, it's over by then, right? So it's July 17th, so we're good. So I just checked that my holidays, I've got them all off the way I want them to be. So that's good. All right, going back to my checklist. WBS Incorrect Alignment. So I'm going to insert a column, and I'm going to call it, it is called the WBS, so I'm going to type W for WBS. Click on that, and you see the numbering, and this is showing the different levels, right? So I just want to make sure that all the levels are the way that I want them, because I could mess this up somewhat by accident, right? I could indent, say, this one here, closeout, and now it's under construction, so it's gone to 110 days. So this 10 days is counted in here. And remember, this is from your first working day to your last working day, and now it's going from here to here. Yeah, but I don't want that. I want my heading to be closeout to be separate because I'm deeming it to be significant. So I just got to outdent that. Now this is back to 100. It's not counting that. And I got to make sure though that, you know, this isn't outdented all the way, because what have I got here? I got 133 days, right? So if I go in and I outdent this again, now it's on the same level as my classroom. So now this is dropped by 10 days. It's not 133, it's 123. So this is giving me a wrong finish date because this is now not in alignment with these, it's in alignment with that. So I've got to be careful about that. So I check my work breakdown structure to make sure everything is in proper alignment. And again, as a quick check, you can go to View and you can look at it by level. You can go View Outline, Level 1. Right, and go up here, level 2, go up here, just bang there, and then we can see them. So there is, are these in the right levels for the way I want? If they are, that's good, because in this case, level 3 for me is all the activities. You could have level 4, level 5, but you keep looking at it and reviewing it, make sure that they're on the right proper levels. Okay, great. So we've done that. And this indicator column during this checklist, it's your best friend. It tells you if something is going on in the activities. All right, so WBS in correct order, and then the next one, it says no links to WAS. We already fixed that, so we're good. Review schedule from the end to the beginning and from the beginning to the end. So yes, I always look at a schedule now. I never used to, but I'll start at the end and I'll ask myself, okay, so what comes before the finish? Commissioning, punch list. That makes sense to me. And just before punch list, substantial completion. Okay, what do we have to have done before substantial completion? According to this, we have to have the painting done. I'm following it backwards, step by step by step, from end to beginning, and then I'm going to review it again from the beginning to the end. So then I'm going to start at the beginning. When you look at things different ways, you see it different ways, and you're much more likely to pick up on a missed link, something that doesn't make sense, and then you fix it. And that's going to be really helpful for you, right? So from the end to the beginning, from the beginning to the end. Usually when you develop the schedule, it's from the beginning to the end, but you go from the end to the beginning. In lean construction methodologies, we do something called pull planning, and we start from the end of a milestone and work our way backwards. So there's a lot of logic and good information at doing it that way. Excuse me. Okay, so I'm going back to my checklist, just hovering over it. Reviews. So I did the reviews. Review network diagram. All right. So I did, and make sure that that makes sense. So we just did that. We made sure that going to the network diagram, parallelograms are all to the left, milestones are indicated. I can see the flow of my critical path, and look at the sequencing. And of course, I would zoom in so that you, at the bottom right corner behind my picture, if I'm covering it, you can zoom in with the plus sign and see things up close and read them for what they're saying and see that this logic makes sense, the sequencing. Go back to the Gantt chart. All right. Again, I'm going to double click on this now because I'm getting down in my checklist here. So it doesn't just all fit in there. Review the network. Review all costs in the cost sheet and resource sheet. And check for resource over allocations. Okay, that's fine. So to do that, number one, I would check, does my overall cost for the project fit my budget amount that I'm supposed to have allocated to the project? If it doesn't, then I know I'm missing something. You can check in your areas of work, do these add up to what they should be in your budget amounts, right? The work breakdown structure allows you to have a cost coding separation of costs. Now, if I want to check things more individualistically, I can slide to the left and I can go down to my resource sheet. And I can just click on this in the resource sheet. So I slid to the left, right-clicked, and I picked resource sheet if you missed that. I can click on the square icon box, right-click, and go to cost. Okay, great. I can see the individual costs that I put onto each resource. So like if I haven't put project coordinator, it means I maybe haven't assigned it, haven't put a cost on it. So I would go back and do that. That's telling me what have I assigned in total. Because like the drywall sub, I might have assigned like in 4 or 5 different places the drywall sub. But this is what it's totaling, which is good. Does this fit the contract that we did through procurements with the drywall sub? So you're doing those checks with your costs. I'm going to slide to the left. There's another one here where it says resource usage that you may find handy instead of doing this. Resource usage, you can see it shows work here. You could insert in this column here, you could insert cost. Type C for cost. And you can see beside the site super how much money has been allocated. And then you can see on the individual tasks how much was assigned to each individual task. So like I said, if I go up here and I make it a little bit wider, and I go down to the drywall sub here, you can see a little bit better. You can see the individual costs that I've applied to each activity. And does that make sense? Does that fit your budget, right? So this is another way of checking your costs to make sure that they're summing up. And you can see where you haven't put any costs and is there a reason for that? Does it make sense? I'm going to slide to the left here, go back to my Gantt chart. So I've checked on my costs and my costs hopefully are in alignment or I've fixed them at that point. And so now I'm all the way down here. Check for resource over allocations. Okay. So resource over allocations. Let's go into the square icon box entry and check. Oh, look, these red guys means I've over allocated resources. What is going on, right? So I can go in, install ceiling tile, construction. Who are these that are over allocated? Slide to the right, go to your resource sheet, and it should show you who it is. And I'm going to go in here, entry, and I'm going to look at, oh, that's strange. I've got the site super 50%. I guess I thought that I could only have the site super half the time on the project originally, but that's changed. We can now have the site super up to 100%. Carpenters, oh, it says only 3. I think we needed 5. So I'm going to change that to 500%. That means we can have up to 5 available. And so now we're not over allocated. We've removed that. I might go in and I might check the individual activities where they're over allocated and work on that. But I gotta look at what's going on and why is that there and make sure that I'm resolving those issues. So I've just checked the resource over allocations on my short checklist here. So it's another one. Spell check, well, it kind of goes without saying. So you could basically go to close this. You can go to where is the spell check now? There it is under project, ABC spelling. Okay. And then basically you can do the spell check all the way through, and it doesn't like that I put over allocations as one word, one thing, 2 words, that sort of thing. Go through it, make it look professional. And double click here. Let's go down. No constraints or approved constraints, right? Also, all activities are in auto schedule unless noted. Okay, so let's do the first one, no constraints. You know what? I don't think there's any constraints in this. I don't see any constraints. But what do I mean by that? Well, let's take a look. So let's say you're working in this, and I've talked about this before. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to pick a date from here. So I just made that April 4th. Now, I don't know if you noticed, but when I did that, everything that was red behind here has disappeared. Right? So I'm just going to click undo just to show you. Undo. No constraint. I went in there and I picked April 4th. And you see, everything, it's gone. I can't tell you how many times clients have problems with that. It's like, where did my critical path go? And of course, you have to turn the critical path on under format, right? So if you don't have it on, that won't show. But it's like, where did it go? And I'll look at the schedule, and one of the first places I look for is constraints. Sometimes I see, just one, and it's knocking it out for most of the project. And it's like, oh, okay. Did you need a constraint there? Why did you put a constraint there? Again, best practice, Project Management Institute, don't put constraints. Like, avoid them where possible. I'm not going to say never, ever, but like, it's too easy to put constraints. That's the problem. You start just shortcutting things and just clicking dates. But what you're doing is you're locking yourself in. And so then, as we've talked about in updating in previous videos, then things won't move and things won't behave the way that you expect. And so, for example, here, if this install metal studs took 2 days instead of 15 days, so I put 2 days here, watch what happens. All of this moved, but this won't move because you've got a constraint that says it can't start any earlier than that date, right? So you want to avoid that, because if you want to see when something is done sooner, if it will be able to pull things up. You want to see if something is done later, if it's going to be able to push things forward, because depending on the constraint, it might not let anything move, because there's quite a few different types of constraints. So the key here is, I'm just going to click undo or Control Z to undo. The key here is then, let's get rid of that's checked. Do we have constraints? Can we see our critical path? Double click, right? Go to the Advanced tab. Go to where it says Constraint Type. See all the different kinds of constraints? Really, you don't want them. You want as soon as possible, 98% of the time. There may be the occasional one, as soon as possible. But if you do use the occasional one, you should expect that your critical path is probably going to disappear. I like to see the critical path, know what's going on, and this is how you do it. So again, that's one of my checks to make sure that there's no constraints. This column, check it completely. Is there anything in this column that looks strange to you, like constraints, like over allocations, like a special calendar? Look at it. It's called the indicator column. If you don't see it on, it's only on the entry screen. If you want it in the cost screen, you can always insert it, right? You can go insert column, type I for indicators, and there it is. Voila. So that's what we want to check there as well on the indicator columns. Just going back to my notes here, this is where the checklist, I can't remember all this stuff. So that's why I've got a checklist, right? All activities are in auto schedule. Review indicator column for any flags, as I said. So we just checked it for flags, the indicator column. In the entry view, sometimes, for whatever the reason, things get somehow manually scheduled. You got to remember that when things have done and things are manually scheduled, your dates might not be correct. So do a quick check. Is everything auto scheduled? And if it is, you're good. If it's not, put it at auto schedule and see if any of your dates change as a result. Because then you may have to make some adjustments because something wasn't in auto schedule, it was in manual schedule, and it didn't really give you the right dates that you wanted, and now you got to look at it and readjust it. Definitely check that. A quick check if you're not sure that you hit everything is you highlight everything, you go to the task tab, and you hit auto schedule again, and anything that's not will become, and you look at the dates, did they change? So there's other items I'm slowly building on this checklist, but to keep it within reason, that you want to run through your schedule to make sure everything's okay. So I think this is a good troubleshooting video for you. Again, if this was a little bit advanced on some of the things, I've covered most of these things in much more detail. Start at video 1. I've got a list of videos in the description on the course, and work through it. The files are loaded that you could download them if you want to follow along and try these different things. And please don't forget, it helps me build the community. I'm going beyond Microsoft Project with Introduction to Construction, Project Management in Construction, Construction Business Management, Project Management Tips, and adding to the videos all the time. You can check my playlist and leave a comment, question, click on notifications, and we'll see you next time. Have a wonderful day. Bye for now.